there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of monocausal explanations, so there's a variety of reasons as to why the red wave did not happen. Part of it is, I think there was, because polling has been so bad here in the past several cycles, that a lot of pollsters kind of built in, more towards the points more towards the Republicans. I think Trump, though, is part of the issue. I think we can all agree that he's a narcissist, he's nasty, he's got an ego, and he's just wearing out his welcome, and he's lost. I mean, elections are about winning, and if you want to govern, you have to win. And this applies to Macedonia, this applies to the United States, this applies to any country that has what we would consider to be pretty free and fair and open elections. And he endorsed a large number of candidates and high-profile candidates this year, and then didn't support them financially. He raised $100 million and spent $15 million of the money that he raised for them. Mitch McConnell, who a lot of Republicans hate and a lot of MAGA Republicans really hate, raised hundreds of millions of dollars and spent it on candidates that he thought were actually going to win. And so let me speak to Arizona as a specific.
Yeah, that's the issue, that he didn't give money to Arizona.
Since I live here. By the way, we should probably, in the time tested and honored tradition of Zeducation. I don't know if you ever watched those videos. Tyler Zed. It's fantastic. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. Tyler Zed. He's got a show twice a week, and it's about 20-25 minutes of memes that he finds from the net. And he's a conservative, and the game is, if you laugh at any of them, you lose, and you've got to do something that he says. But today is Sunday, the 13th of November, so he begins the Sunday episode with Nancy Pelosi. Good morning, Sunday morning. her famous brain fart in her interview with George Stephanopoulos some years ago. So this is actually episode 147 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. This is Jason Miko coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin and Jason in Skopje, Macedonia, and we're discussing what was supposed to be a very pleasant and successful night for the Republicans in the U.S., and somehow it came to be.
Yes, exactly. So let's start with Arizona. So first of all, I have to point out that Florida had a state of emergency last Monday. So today's the 13th. So Monday the 7th, they had a state of emergency because they had a hurricane. I think it was Nicole bearing down on them. Tuesday, they voted. Tuesday night, they reported all of their election results. Wednesday, the hurricane hit. Thursday, they started cleaning up. Friday, they were done cleaning up. And Arizona is still counting its votes.
Yeah.
We
so
still
you live
don't.
In a third world country there.
Yeah, okay. So taking a step back, so the Secretary of State in each of the 50 states is responsible for elections at the federal level, the state level, and then delegating to the local levels. When it comes to mayoral races and things of that nature, county races. So the county recorder is, but overall, it's the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State in the Grand Canyon State, the great state of Arizona, is one Katie Hobbs, who also happens to be running for governor of the state of Arizona. So she is currently ahead against Kari Lake, the television broadcaster, who we all thought would win and win handily, who is a MAGA Republican, a Trump Republican, to broadly use that definition. But Katie Hobbs, who should have stepped down, resigned before running for governor as Secretary of State because her office is responsible for counting the votes. I'm not saying anything nefarious is going on, but I can tell you, I can promise you, there's a whole lot of incompetence going on right now in Arizona with the way the votes are being counted, and that has to be corrected. So she should
Can I
have stepped
say that
down.
something nefarious is going on?
Sure, you can say whatever you want.
My God, dude.
But
Okay,
but
carry on.
we still have I think again as of Sunday morning. This is about a little after 9 a.m. We're recording. What is it? 3, 4, 5, 5 p.m. A little after 5 p.m. in Macedonia. I think there's still at least 200,000 votes out in the various counties. We have 15 counties in the state, so it could still go either way. That race, the governor's race. The Senate race was called for Mark Kelly, unfortunately. Blake Masters. Now, here's a good example. So Blake Masters, endorsed by Donald Trump and Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley tech billionaire. So they spent a lot of money in the primaries to get Blake Masters elected. I voted in the primary for Mark Brnovich, our Attorney General, who I thought was much better. Very conservative, very electable, very good, very competent. Blake Masters won. And then Peter Thiel and Donald Trump didn't spend any money on him. It was the Heritage Foundation that had to come in and do a 7-figure spend about a month ago for Blake Masters. And so Donald Trump and Peter Thiel didn't spend, maybe they spent a little bit, I haven't seen the numbers, but they really didn't spend any money to get him elected. And he was just a poor candidate. And this speaks to the issue, going back to what we started with, why was there no red wave? Candidate quality matters. So in Arizona, I think Mark Brnovich would have beat Mark Kelly. Doug Ducey, our governor, who is term limited, and so he'll be stepping down, was thinking of running for Senate, but he knew that and he had his disagreements with Donald Trump in the 2020 election. He knew that if he ran, and he's got young kids, his family would be mercilessly pounded by Trump and MAGA Republicans. Chris Sununu in New Hampshire, same thing. He could have run for Senate there.
He could have
didn't want to. And you see this in other places where we had good, competent, quality candidates that just didn't want to put them. Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania could have run again, didn't want to. And so Mehmet Oz ran and discovered he was a Republican about 20 minutes after he announced. And against a man who cannot speak. We wish John Fetterman a speedy recovery, but from his stroke in May, which was 2 or 3 days before the Democrat primary there. But they've elected a man who cannot carry out the duties required by a United States senator. So that just speaks, I think, to candidate quality. So you had that. You had the issue with polling that was skewed towards Republicans when it shouldn't have been. But here, let me talk about what I see as the silver lining. So as we speak, the Democrats are going to control the United States Senate. Whether it's going to be 51 or 50 is another question, because we go back to, again, as we did 2 years ago, Georgia. There's going to be a runoff. Georgia has its own weird election laws that candidate has to clear 50% to be elected. Both candidates, Raphael Warnock, the current sitting senator, who is a reverend but certainly does not act like a believer in Jesus Christ, did not get it. Neither did Herschel Walker, the Heisman Trophy winner, college football star 40 years ago. So it'll go to runoff on December 6th. If Herschel Walker wins, then it's a 50-50 Senate, meaning we're at status quo. If Raphael Warnock wins, then it's 51-49. Basically status quo, because the Democrats need at least 2 more senators in order to get rid of the filibuster, which is there's another explanation of that, which I won't get into, but 2 current senators, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who was up in 2 years, and Kristen Sinema, who is our other senator from the great state of Arizona, are very much mavericks in the John McCain sense of the word, and won't vote to get rid of the filibuster. So anyway, so that's the Senate. On the House, we're inching up. It's still 211 to 204 right now. The magic number is 218. There's 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. Republicans need 211 minus 287. We'll get that, but it's going to be by the slimmest of slim margins. it's going to be even slimmer than the current Democrat lead is. It'll probably be 220. You need 218 to 220. Yeah, 2 seats. I mean, now we're getting into Macedonian politics here, talking about 1-seat majority or something like that. But this is good for the country, and I'll tell you why, Cvetin. It produces gridlock. Nothing can get done, and that's good news. We don't want the Democrats and their president, the president of the United States, I should say, he's my president too, to be able to advance their agenda. And if the Republicans hold the House, they cannot advance their agenda. Now, having said that, if in the next 2 years a couple of Republicans fall out of windows and get replaced by Democrats, then the House could change hands. We've seen the Senate change hands before because of weird things like that. Not because of anybody fell out a window, but other issues. So that is possible. But if there's gridlock, nothing gets done. The Democrats can't advance their agenda. And here's the other good thing. So Joe Biden gave a speech the other day. Nancy Pelosi is crowing. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate, is crowing. They're all very much high on their own farts right now, and they think that this is an endorsement of the Democrat policy agenda for the past 2 years. It is not. Joe Biden, who can barely walk and talk these days, is probably going to run again for president, which is good for Republicans, which is good for the nation, because he can't win up against somebody like, say, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, or just about anybody else. Whether or not he can run against, whether or not he can beat Donald Trump, whether or not Donald Trump runs again is still an open question. So Donald Trump has a major announcement on Tuesday the 15th of this month, so in 2 days. He said it's going to be one of the most important speeches in American history, which, okay, we've been around for 240 some odd years. We've had a lot of speeches by a lot of people and a lot of presidents. And this probably is not going to be one of the most important speeches. Now, the thought was that he was going to announce that he's running for president. Now, does he do that or not? I don't know. If you formally announce that you're running for president of the United States, there's a number of legal and financial obligations and issues that come to the fore that a candidate has to comply with, not only at the federal level, but then at the state level. And in order to qualify for ballots on the state, to be on the ballot on the state for president, because we do our elections by 50 states, there's a number of issues that have to be complied with, and I have no idea what those are. You'd have to talk to an election lawyer. So whether or not he actually announces he's going to run, or maybe he just says, I intend to run in 2024. He wants to keep other people out of the race. Who knows? Maybe he's going to say something else. Maybe he's going to say, I'm not going to run. which then it would be one of the most important speeches given in United States history. But we'll see. I mean, this past week, he was, again, already attacking Governor Ron DeSantis, the star governor of Florida, who won by 20 points 4 years ago when Ron DeSantis won against Andrew Gillum, who turned out to be a gay crackhead, the Democrat Party. 4 years ago, Ron DeSantis won by less than a half a percentage point, 30,000 votes. This time he won by 1.5 million votes. Yeah. He is a star, and the Florida legislature is Republican now. And the reason that Florida can count all of its votes within 5 or 6 hours is because of the debacle in 2000 with the hanging chads and the election that eventually went to George W. Bush. And a lot of credit, we all like to laugh at him and make fun of him, but a lot of credit goes to Jeb Bush, who was governor of Florida, and then turned things around and said, we're gonna clean this up. This is ridiculous for us to be the laughing stock of the country. Yet now Arizona gets to be the laughing stock of the country, as well as Nevada and some parts of California who are still having some issues in counting votes as well. But Trump was attacking Ron DeSantis this week, and then he started attacking Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, who won last year, without the help of Donald Trump. Because Trump did not come into the state of Virginia and campaign for Glenn was able to thread that needle and get Trump MAGA votes as well as others. So why is he attacking? A lot of our listeners won't know this. And let me just take a quick step back. Cvetin, I've been following politics in this country closely for 42 years, over 4 decades. Most of our listeners were not alive 42 years ago. Some were, but I'll bet you most weren't. I've been playing in the sandbox for an awful long time. I used to be very involved in politics. I've, working on campaigns and things like that. So it's an area I know about. I know, yes, admission is the first. Admission of my addiction is the first step on the road to recovery. Yes, but I forgot where I was going with that. 42 years in politics, and oh yeah, the 11th commandment. The 11th commandment is from Ronald Reagan. Thou shalt not attack thy fellow Republican. But and why? I know why he's attacking Ron DeSantis, because he fears a challenge from Trump. Fears a challenge from Ron DeSantis in the presidential race. But right now, Ron DeSantis has other things to worry about. So the Florida legislature meets for 2 months out of a year. So each state legislature has its own rules and whatnot. Some meet year round, some meet part time, etc. A lot of them, the members of the legislature have day jobs, and then they legislate whenever they're called into session. And Florida's session, I think, is March, April. It's like 2 months, which is amazing. So he's not going to do. Ron DeSantis isn't going to do anything before he gets that behind him. So we're looking at May, June before he would even think about announcing. But Donald Trump is trying to keep Ron DeSantis from running, or announcing, or thinking, or actually, what the Trump team wants is for Ron DeSantis to scrape and bow before Donald Trump and pay fealty to him. So that's all a mess. I mean, we don't need this. The Democrats are going to act like that. This was a victory for them. They're going to get cocky. They already are cocky. I mean, look, nothing lasts forever. At some point, these United States of America will be free from both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and that'll be a good day for the Republic. we need. I mean, we've got Joe Biden turns 80 this month. 80. Nancy Pelosi is 81. Chuck Schumer is approaching 80, the leader of the Senate. Mitch McConnell is approaching 80. The majority. Chuck Schumer is the majority leader. Mitch McConnell is the Republican leader of the Republicans in the Senate. These are ancient people.
Yeah.
we need new, fresh, young blood, and we've got it. We've got it in spades in the Republican Party. I don't know about the Democrats, and I don't care about the Democrats. But we need this. We need new leadership. We need competent people. We need winners. Who was the actor a few years ago? Was it Sean Penn or no? The Estevez kid.
I mean, there is Emilio Estevez and
what was his name?
his father. You mean his father, Martin Sheen? Charlie Sheen?
Charlie Sheen. Yeah. He had public meltdowns, and his thing was winning.
Okay.
So I mean, you got to win if you want to govern. You got to win, and that also invites a little bit of compromise, which for purists like me is sometimes a dirty word. But you can't govern if you don't win. I remember Jim DeMint, the former U.S. Senator who became president of the Heritage Foundation for a while, said he'd rather have 30 conservative senators in the Senate than 60 Republican rhinos. A rhino is Republican in name only.
Yeah.
No. I think I'd rather have the 60 rhinos that could at least, there's some compromise here, a bit of horse trading. That's what politics is all about. A little dark room with cigars, and that's the way it works. So to advance your agenda, absolutely. So anyway, that is my
Detailed.
30,000 foot, 10,000 meter perspective of it's not as bad as we think, as long as we keep the House. And I think my own congressman, Juan Ciscomani, is about 1,300 votes ahead right now, with 92% of the votes tallied in against a really extreme liberal, leftist, progressive Democrat, Engel. I think it's Karen Engel.
So
hopefully he'll win.
where are the votes not being counted in your city? I mean, I've been to Tucson and a bit to Phoenix. They look like normal, sensible cities, not like Philadelphia, not like Baltimore, a place where you can just do whatever you want to win. Pennsylvania, or I don't know, Michigan, Detroit and Michigan. What neighborhoods do you not have the results for?
That's a great question. I actually don't know, because the 6th district, which is my district, we have nine congressional districts in the great state of Arizona. Because we just had redistricting throughout the country. So every 10 years, based on the census, you redo the lines of all of the federal districts, the state legislatures, things of that nature. So this district encompasses part of Tucson, part of Oro Valley, where I live, if not the whole of Oro Valley, and then going south and east down towards the border with both Mexico and the state of New Mexico, which encompasses Cochise County, Fort Huachuca military base. Military is always Sierra Vista, which is the city that there. Military is always Republican. So, and then the rural, the ranchers and others who vote Republican as well. So, a lot of votes from there. The question is, how many of those votes are out versus how many from the greater Tucson area? Tucson, unfortunately, is run by Democrats. So we'll see. It just depends. I think that the trend though is pretty good. I think we will get that seat.
No, but what did the county authorities say? What's the reason that you don't have the results a week after the election almost? I mean, we had, as you said, we have a divided parliament here, which after the 2020 elections, during which we had a curious outage of the state electoral commission, the computers and everything, they said it did not affect the counting, it affected the just the visible front end part of the website, nothing important. But then we got very curious results afterwards. And this is considered the worst election in our time in terms of organizing and veracity of the results. And yet this was all in the span of one evening. The problem with the election was that we did not have the results by 10:30, 11, which is customary. It was by 1 in the morning. You are now days after the election. What's the reason they cannot count the vote?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't actually know. I mean, now the other thing is, one of the things that COVID produced, at least here in America, was this idea of early voting and mail-in voting. Now, I admit I do mail-in voting. I get an early ballot and then I fill it out and it sits around on my table for another week and then I finally get it in just in time. I don't like it, and so yes, I confess I'm a bit of a hypocrite there. I think we should get rid of early voting and mail-in voting unless you take the time to go down and prove, yes, look, I'll be out of the country, and here's the proof, or or if you're in the hospital or something like that. So it's these mail-in ballots, the early ballots. A lot of people, like I just said, like me, will get their ballot in the mail and then they take it down to the voting booths on voting day. And so, in addition to everybody that shows up to vote in line, then the tabulators have all of these. Literally, it's an envelope, a big envelope with your ballot in it, that then has to be tabulated as well. And so, I think there were a lot of folks like that, at least here in Arizona, that did that. Our friend John Gabriel, who's up in Mesa, which is the Phoenix area, was talking on a podcast, the Ricochet podcast yesterday that I was listening to, and said basically the same thing, that a lot of people just bring in their ballots that day, and then for whatever reason, this doesn't excuse the incompetence of the Secretary of State of Arizona and those that work for her that are responsible for this. But
if it is incompetence,
it's incompetence. Yeah, ultimately it's incompetence. Florida.
If it is.
Yeah, well, I think it is. Look, I'm not going to relitigate the election of 1960 in which John Kennedy stole the election from Richard Nixon, but it is well known that it probably was stolen. But it takes a lot to steal an election, especially at the presidential level. I suppose for the local if you're voting for local dog catcher, you might be able to manipulate a few votes here and there, especially if there's just a handful of votes. And here's a quick aside, we have a wonderful town I should say, up in northern Arizona in the White Mountains called Show Low, SHOW and then LOW, Show Low. And the story is that there was an election for whatever local position, and candidates won had equal number of votes. And so they decided to award the election. They got out a deck of 52 cards, and each guy took a card, and it was the guy that had the lowest card won. That's why you show low. So and there have been other stories like that throughout the years here in America at various levels, mostly local levels, where you got weird little things like that where an election is determined by that. So yes, at that level, I suppose you could probably manipulate an election. But the interesting thing, actually, though, is that as you look around and see all these tight races and those that have been chosen or determined by just a few thousand votes, you're not hearing a lot of the election was stolen rhetoric coming from candidates. Blake Masters is currently losing by 130,000 votes to Mark Kelly. That's you can't that's hard to manipulate. You're not going to be able to claim that was stolen. I don't know where I was going with that.
I mean, that itself was a curious development. That,
which one? Sorry.
There is not that much outrage from the right side. There is not that much complaining that the election was stolen, which raises another issue. I mean, that it's that a lot of the people in the GOP are happy that that a number of candidates lost the election, who they're now quickly tying to Trump, and that they're using this defeat or the absence of the red wave. I mean, the GOP still won the House probably, and very status quo antebellum in the Senate, but they are now able to mount an attack on Trump, and this now looks like the preferred outcome for many in the party, and that's why there is not that much outrage. Although, I mean, I see a lot of comments from the right, let's say the Trump right. They're calling it the selection, not the election. And I mean, I guess everybody's kind of, the people who were in the know, who were prepared for this outcome, they're going after Trump. While the other side, we have several tweets from Trump going after the candidates who, going after DeSantis, and maybe Youngkin. I guess maybe there were several defeats in Virginia where I think the GOP was hoping to win. I'm not sure if these were endorsed by Trump, so maybe this is the reason. Maybe he felt that, McConnell did not support Blake Masters enough with funding. I mean, it's not the job of Peter Thiel to fund him. It's not the job of Trump or of Heritage. It's the job of the Republican Senate committee, right? They are the ones who collect the money for the campaign. I mean, of course, everybody can chip in. But on the right, they're not as aggressive with this narrative. But, I mean, in my sense, they should be. I mean, this is very clear that a lot of people who we consider as Trumpers, who should be on the same team with both the Trump candidates of the GOP and the non-Trump candidates in the GOP, are, very. They were. I said this. I watched the Daily Wire backstage show the morning after the elections were at night here. I wake up. I see it's going well. It was still going well. Early time Macedonia time, and then I realize it's not going as well, and I turn on the Daily Wire, and I expected to see people who are shocked, who are amazed, and who are angry, and then maybe in a few days we can see this develop into a post-mortem where the party went wrong, what went wrong, who's to blame, and maybe it would naturally flow to Trump being at fault for the weak candidates we ran in the places where we were supposed to win, so we got cocky and etc. But just as the first results start coming in, I see the hosts, they have a list of races I didn't pay attention to, I didn't know about, and they already know, oh look, we're losing here, it's because of Trump. Oh look, we're losing here, it's a guy who Trump endorsed, and the rest of the party was squeamish about. So it was very prepared for me. It was very choreographed, and I was joking. Okay, it's not the Daily Wire backstage; it's the Daily Wire backstab. Right? And then they had like Megyn Kelly in, and she was not in on the story, but she was also prepared for this. So we had a fight: Megyn Kelly, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is all out saying it's Trump's fault. Let's get rid of Trump. And Megan says, listen, don't get ahead of your skis. He's still by far the most popular person in the party. Even we'll just split the party, we'll divide it. He'll still, destroy DeSantis in a primary if this is how we try to play it or you try to play it, or the establishment wing of the party tries to play it, and we'll just hand the Dems 2024 as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is my thinking, that the GOP did not do enough, and then we still have it's very, very naive to ascribe to incompetence or, foolishness or whatever. The fact that we're now having, after 2020, we have another election where, some races where they can fortify, I think is the term used for the elections, for the rigging of the elections, where they can fortify the election in Philadelphia to no end. Okay, fine, they can do it in the same evening. Mm-hmm. In places where you don't have like the sprawling ghettos, there are no ghettos of that size in Phoenix or in Tucson. It probably takes them a while to fortify the elections well, to the point they want to. So, it's unacceptable that it's 5 days later they don't have the result.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. That there needs to be some major reform of the counting and the procedures, etc. As I said, mail-in ballots are an issue. Early ballots, early voting is an issue. And there are things you can do to correct that. I think obviously Florida is a perfect example. A couple of things though. I don't think I haven't seen any Republicans that said, "Oh, I'm happy that such and such a Republican lost the Senate," or such and such a Republican lost the House. I haven't seen that, and I'm certainly not happy that Blake Masters lost or that Mehmet Oz lost. I want them to win. As I said earlier, if you're going to govern, you gotta have a majority and you gotta win, even if I don't agree. Look, there's nobody that I agree with 100% on in terms of political candidates or elected politicians, but you gotta win. So, to your point on Trump and Peter Thiel not funding races, no, I would say that it's their obligation to fund. They went out, they raised money. Mm-hmm. You can go back and look at least Trump, look at his fundraising appeals, etc. And if you're raising money, you should spend it on the candidates that you endorse. And everybody is responsible for that. We have what are called PACs, political action committees. Maybe we should introduce this into Macedonia. A lot of people are divided on PACs, and they call it dark money and things like that. There are candidate affiliated PACs, there's party affiliated PACs, and then there's unaffiliated PACs that, in theory, raise a whole bunch of money. An unaffiliated PAC, for instance, raises a whole bunch of money and spends it on behalf of candidate X. But there's no coordination between that candidate and the PAC. They don't talk to each other. They don't do anything. But the PAC puts out commercials that says, candidate X is a great person, blah, blah, blah. Or the person running against candidate X is a horrible person, etc., to oversimplify it. But I would say that, no, Peter Thiel and Donald Trump and PACs affiliated with them, etc., had an absolute obligation to fund these candidates. The problem was the candidates were, sketchy. Mehmet Oz isn't even, I don't know if he's a Pennsylvania resident or not. But he was a television star. He wasn't a candidate. So I wasn't a politician. So Fetterman, for all of his faults, is actually the lieutenant governor of the state of Pennsylvania. So he is an elected official. So, but yeah, I going back to the issue of being happy about people losing, no, I don't think anybody is. And again, going back to the issue of Trump, let me take a further step back. The irony of this, Cvetin, is that the name of this podcast is the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. Mm-hmm. Now, we get that name from Hillary Clinton, of course, who blamed Macedonian content farmers for her loss. Mm-hmm. She claimed a lot of Democrats. There's a YouGov poll out that came out after the 2016 election, and I'd have to find the results. But a large percentage of Democrats believe the 2016 election was stolen, just as a percentage of Republicans believe the 2020 elections were stolen. But the reason that we have called this the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast is because Mark Stein, wonderful conservative, had that little spiel about who Hillary Clinton was blaming, including Macedonian content farmers, for losing the election. I mean, as late as recently as 2019, Hillary Clinton was still saying the illegitimate election of 2016. And so, that reflects badly, I think, on the Democrats, certainly on Hillary Clinton and on others that continue to deny the results of the 2016 election. It was extremely close in 2016. 2020 was extremely close. And the reason, and again, I go back, I'm sure we've mentioned this on a podcast in the past, that if Donald Trump had handled COVID better, if he hadn't come out and said, it'll be gone in 2 weeks, back in March of 2020, if he had handled it better, I think he'd still be president today. I mean, I think that was you can't underestimate. That was a huge, huge issue. But anyway, that's in the past.
No, but it's not in the past if it is going to keep repeating, if it's going to keep happening again and again. So you have a chronic problem of large states where the GOP should win, like Michigan and Pennsylvania, and has won under Trump the first time around, which have this huge city which is a hellhole. I mean, as we say here, I wouldn't tie a dog to a lamppost in Philadelphia or Detroit, and they still get to hold their own elections without oversight from the government. And who are you going to send to do the oversight? The FBI are going to investigate organized election ballot stuffing, and if anything, they might investigate Florida, maybe, if they turn on DeSantis. They're not going to investigate theft in democratic states. And this is a big deal. We have a polarizing country, and it's going to keep getting polarized, except that, maybe now for a while, or maybe for the whole 2 years, we're going to shift this polarization to the GOP, because at the moment, the Trump wing is mostly holding their powder dry. They're not attacking. The non-Trump wing, and some people who were not supposed to be in the non-Trump wing, we have the New York Post jumping in on attacking Trump. I did not see that coming. I could see the American Enterprise Institute, I can see the Daily Wire guys, but I did not see the New York Post doing this. This is going to keep festering, and I was not a Trump guy. In 2015, 2016, I was dismayed that he's going to win, that he's going to be the nominee. I thought he's going to lose, first and foremost. And Macedonia was in such a difficult situation at the time. We desperately needed at least a neutral administration in the US to stop the organized, very active colored revolution attacks on the Macedonian government, which included rigging elections with the full coordination of the US embassy. This is undeniable and doubtless true. This is common knowledge to anybody here that the US government, that its diplomats were micromanaging results in our equivalent of Philadelphia or Detroit, getting the ghettos to vote not for the usual party, but for a different party, so that they can even out the results between the two main Macedonian parties, and then micromanaging the coalition making, and then arresting members of parliament when they still fell short of 2/3 majority. So I don't really see why they wouldn't do it over there if they're doing it here, and in God knows how many other countries that it's happening. If anything, I expect that the demo operatives and their diplomats, who are all in the same ideological and political complex, and the intelligence community, if anything, they're exchanging notes. At least exchanging notes, if not directly coordinating actions. So what do we do now? Do we, ideally we would have had a Trump-DeSantis ticket in 2024, or a DeSantis-Trump Jr. ticket in the old feudal fashion of Game of Thrones. Okay, maybe the Mad King steps down, but we have his young the youngling running for vice president, or a Trump.
I can't comment on that because I've never seen a single episode of Game of Thrones.
I know, but it's the usual feudal stuff, exchange of hostages, intermarriage of political families, blah blah blah. You know how it works.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, again, the U.S. government, the federal government, again, the elections are left to the states. The U.S. Constitution says that the federal government can determine what day the elections for the House and the Senate and the President will be held. But it's up to the states to organize them. So you got 50 states, secretaries of states to organize them. Federal government, believe it or not, I know you may not believe this, but doesn't interfere in those. That's up. If you want interference, there's plenty of people at the local level that can interfere. But I want to go back to Florida because if you look at the actual results of the election in terms of who voted for, Ron DeSantis won all but 5 counties, including Miami-Dade, which is a heavily Democrat county. He won I think a majority of Hispanics. I think also women and independents. So if you just go down the list and see who he was able to get to vote for him and the Republicans, and the Republicans have a supermajority now in the state legislature. And the bottom line is it's because of good governance. In the past 4 years, he actually did things for the people of the state of Florida, that cut across party lines or class or gender or anything else. People said he's a competent, and from everything I've heard, he's a policy wonk, a bit nerdy, and he knows the stuff. He's done his homework, and he governs well. Apparently, he's a little bit socially awkward, but that's okay. It's more important that he's a good governor. And people across party lines voted for him and voted for the Republicans. In places like Detroit now, Detroit of course is becoming, if it isn't already, it's becoming majority Muslim. Now, I would think that Muslims can make common cause with conservatives, especially conservative Christians, on issues of the culture wars. They don't want their kids being transed. They don't want drag queen story hour going on in their schools. They don't want the pronoun wars going on in their schools. And we've already seen Muslims actually go to school boards and complain about this loudly, vocally. We should be able to make common cause with them on this, just as with Hispanics across the country. And I hate the word Hispanic because my brother-in-law is a Mexican, okay? So he was actually born in Mexico. He's a U.S. citizen, obviously. But if you ask him, what are you, his first answer is going to be, I'm an American. So, ethnic Hispanics who are Mexican versus Venezuelan versus Puerto Rican versus Cuban versus, pick your country that speaks Spanish. You can't just dump them all into the same category, which is what the Democrats have always believed, that you can do that and they'll automatically vote Democrat. Same thing with Asians. You just can't do that. It doesn't work that way anymore. And as for instance, Cubans come to America, Florida, and start working, etc. They identify more with the Republican Party than the Democrat Party. So, I guess my point is that it's good governance. That is, it can be done, and you can get people to vote for you if you are a competent executive or a competent politician at whatever elected level. So, maybe let's touch, because this will be very brief. Maybe we can touch a little bit about how these elections affect Macedonian foreign policy, because the answer is not at all. Yeah. So, divided government. The State Department, of course, runs its own show. It doesn't matter who the president of the United States is when it comes to countries like Macedonia, countries of the Balkans. When it comes to bigger issues, for instance, let's say Russia, China, Israel, etc. Then there's a little the executive power and the Congress, not meaning the House and the Senate, have a little more influence and a little more say, etc. But I know that the new U.S. ambassador has just landed and started tweeting vociferously in Macedonia. There, Angela. I keep saying Angela. I think she's German. Angela Aguilar, AA. So she started tweeting furiously. What was her first tweet? I think she says. Let me see if I can find it here.
She was doing some food stuff,
Oh yeah.
and that she's back.
Happy to be back.
in Macedonia.
Happy to be back to North Macedonia, and thrilled to be working again with the greatest embassy team. I mean, which I had to respond to because she had never been in North Macedonia. There was no North Macedonia then, just as I say there is none now. But anyway, she's going to be the same. She's going to do whatever her bosses and on C Street, State Department in Washington, says to do, etc. So, yeah, I don't expect any change there. Macedonia's going to.
There was some push here on, I think somebody on the right actually, like, okay, Russia is losing, the GOP is losing.
Hey, don't throw Russia and the GOP into the same basket, please.
For our, how should we put this? For the, for the U.S. security, intelligence, aggressive international liberalism, whatever we call this, whatever the U.S. government is promoting, that it was a good day both domestically and at the Eastern Front, and that Macedonia, obviously, if it has some chance, if it can hope for some turnaround in either by things changing politically in the U.S. or security situation in Europe changing dramatically with Russia advancing, then it was a bad week for anybody hoping that things would change in Macedonia one way or another. Because obviously the U.S. embassy here, the Democratic Party establishment has, and this was my problem with Trump. I wanted to have a more competent conservative, somebody who would have who would have all the old diplomats in the State Department who are Republican, promoted by Republican presidents, elected president. So it's not just Trump and maybe the Secretary of State appointed by him, and then nobody else listens to either of them and runs their own thing, and at the least ignores them, at the worst continue foreign policy as usual. I was a Ted Cruz guy. I was hoping that Ted Cruz would still, have all the U.S. diplomats from the GOP era, from the Bush era, who we did not see as enemies of Macedonia, as hostile, as so friendly to the Albanian cause or every other cause in the region which is against our national interests. That maybe, Ted Cruz as president would get like a neutral to maybe even favorable U.S. administration, and we would preserve a Macedonian government instead of whatever this is that we have now. That's not, even if the GOP now won the Senate, I doubt that something would change in foreign policy toward Macedonia. But we've done hoping that there is anything short than maybe like a Trump victory in the elections, and then he outright appoints a Macedonian as ambassador to Macedonia, and his wife as Secretary of State or something. I don't know. That something would change in U.S. policy toward the Balkans, where we as Macedonians would get a fair shake.
Right.
It has to be an extreme Republican, change with whatever with the current foreign policy, with the current people in the State Department. So it was. This is how it was seen by some, me and my position is that the worse it gets, the better. The more maybe people in Macedonia on the left awaken to. Just this week we had Albanians advancing on jobs in the public administration that are considered that really should be technocratic and meritocratic. Like we're talking air traffic control, rigged hiring in the air traffic control system, with the Albanian director wanting to have his people there. This is what I'm saying. Okay, probably we need to see a plane crash probably before people start taking the things that are happening in Macedonia seriously.
Right.
Or we have talk about another Albanian party joining the coalition, which would now we have an even split of Macedonians and Albanians in the government of ministers. And if we add the deputy ministers, there are significantly more Albanians than Macedonians. And if SDSM are forced to add another Albanian coalition partner, it would be a joke. We'll be approaching 2/3 Albanian government, in a country which is 2/3 ethnic Macedonian. And there is we're not. I prefer talks of strife in the West, maybe having the Western countries occupied between themselves, where we have this very funny development in the UK now, that the big story in the UK is Albanians coming in with boats and invading the island after, the UK was very loudly and strongly supportive of the Albanian cause in the Balkans. So the response here among Christian Slavs in the Balkans is, great.
You get what you deserve.
Have some.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and if the US is now entering a stage of infighting, even more tensions, at least it will be dealing with itself and not inflicting actively damage to other countries, except that, the way things are going, the damage will be mostly within the Republican Party with infighting and recriminations. And is it going to be fixed until 2024? So you can have either a unity ticket, a Santis Trump Jr. unity ticket, or, maybe they get married, like somebody from I don't know how old are Glenn Youngkin's children, get married to. Actually, Trump's daughter is getting married today, right?
I'm not sure.
She doesn't have. Yeah, Tiffany is getting married. Maybe Barron. Maybe they married Barron to some of the DeSantis or Youngkin children, and then they can run. They can unify the families and run a unity ticket, or one wing wins conclusively by the end of 2023, hopefully, and then you can patch up and otherwise, this is a joke. In this type of inflation, in these fuel prices, defeat in Afghanistan, another war, to have brain dead candidates, literally, just both the president and a serious senatorial candidate, and you get to we're talking about even a wave would have been made 30 seats in the Congress and 5 seats swing in the Senate, and that's the wave, or that would have been a deluge, and you got 15 or 12 seats swing in the Congress and nothing.
No, in the House, we'll be lucky if we get ridiculous. 8. So and 8. 0 in the Senate. So actually, we might even lose one in the Senate. So
it's ridiculous.
The United States can be blamed for plenty of things. In the United States and around the world. But I think the United States has also been a force for good when you take a look at
it used to be.
Sorry?
It used to be,
yeah. Well, I think it still is. But don't put all the blame on the United States. Macedonians, there's plenty of blame amongst the ethnic Macedonians. If you didn't have so many stupid people in Cvetin that thought that, we can actually please the State Department by giving the State Department and the EU whatever they want, knowing that the State Department will never love you. The European Union will never love you. These idiots in Cvetin, leftists, ultimately, if there's something wrong on the planet, I blame generally leftists, progressives, Democrats, Cvetin, whatever. And I also blame the other issue that Macedonia has, unfortunately, is, and listeners, listen very careful to what I say. The other issue that Macedonia has that is a huge problem is the ethnic Albanian parties. I did not say ethnic Albanians. I said the parties, the leadership of the parties, because they are not ideological in terms of the way we think of Cvetin and Vomero, for instance. They've got very distinct platforms on how they see the future of the country, the vision. The ethnic Albanian parties in Macedonia, their vision of the future is give us stuff. Our people are too stupid to know better. We're going to be condescending pricks and just give us stuff like your example there with Dewey and the jobs. Air traffic controllers to incompetent children that never even flown in a plane before, and you want them running the bloody air traffic control? Yeah, to your point, maybe it will take a plane crash. Hopefully it's not one that I'm on or my friends are on. But bloody hell, this this is a problem that Macedonia has, that they've got to figure out what to do about these stinking parties. That you know, if you don't get 61 seats, if an ethnic Macedonian party and its coalition doesn't get 61 seats, you have to have a coalition with ethnic Albanian parties that just say, give us stuff. They have no ideology other than give us stuff. Maybe that's the title of this podcast. I don't know. Now I'm upset because I'm sick and tired of these parties, and I'm sick and tired of ethnic Macedonians that you know that make common cause with the State Department or the EU and the ethnic Albanian parties that don't actually give a damn about Macedonia. End of rant.
Yeah. It's oh boy.
All right. Well, we're running long here. About 55 minutes, I think, so far. So let's wrap this up, I guess. And you know what? If we do this in 2 weeks, maybe then we'll know the results of the U.S. elections.
Yeah, hopefully it might be nice to know what we're talking about. No, just the result, the state of the counting is the story.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah.
And it's happening again, and it will happen again, and well, I mean, it's. I did not see this coming. All of
Nobody
this
did.
Becoming a feature of our planet and of the Western world, that the U.S. is now such an aggressive exporter of aggressive ideologies, and that itself it has this
Careful, it's
level of dysfunction.
careful. It's not the U.S. that's the exporter. It is the left in the U.S. that's the exporter. So.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but they hold the system. You need to take the system away from them, at least, or maybe at least for the 4 years that you hold it, that you can actually use it. And this is what we're talking about.
There are bright spots. I mean, look at Matt Walsh and the work he's doing on the trans issue. In Tennessee, he got Vanderbilt University to shut down its Transing of the Children program, and the legislature in Tennessee is looking into it. I mean, there are bright spots, but it's, you know, as we've talked about many times in this podcast, it's a constant fight. You know, there's never a decisive victory. It's always, you're always going to get pushback from these nihilists and brutalists on the left that you know, their march towards so-called utopia, which means literally no place. Anyway, all right. I'm about ready to go on another rant there. So
let's not start the podcast again. Let's not restart the podcast. Okay, yeah, we'll see what's happening.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll reconvene in
Sounds
2
good.
weeks or so.
All right, take care.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Take care.